really riled up about, because the front lines of the culture war. It's weird, but it's not even played out by the Pentecostal evangelical spirit. You never see them. They're off in the side somewhere. And I don't know, maybe that's good. But who's on the front lines of the battle for culture? You know, it's going to be a Ron Paul or a Jordan Peterson or a Ben Shapiro, an Orthodox Jew, or it's going to be Dave Chappelle, of all things. So here's the deal. Chappelle has his new show, The Closer. He has, and today I'm finding out, because he has one segment in it on the transgender issue, pointing out that is in a humorous way that if you're that the biological female, whether you want to call yourself a male or not, is the only species that actually has babies. And then he goes into his comedy routine, you know, making it clear that there is a very simple way of understanding gender if you define it by just that fact alone. And he does it in a very comedic way. Dave's got this hilarious whole... Listen, the thing with Dave Chappelle is he's not... If you've never heard him, I'm not encouraging you that are, the conservative Christians out there to go get an immersion in. But I'm going to tell you something. He is very funny. In a shocking sort of way, he's very funny. And I first discovered him on an airplane. I'll tell you how this is. Here. So I want you to see what happens. I'm on the airplane. And I never heard of Dave Chappelle. But there's a guy who's sitting across from me. Can you guys see this? They got the lower third thing. I don't know if you guys can see it. I don't know if people can see this. Anyway, he's watching. He's got his computer there, and he's got headphones on, right? So he's got his headphones on. Nobody can hear him. And it's just Dave Chappelle. And then he goes like this, laughing, and he closes the lid and looks around in case anybody else heard it. But nobody can hear it. He's got headphones on. Then he puts it up again, and he's listening, and he starts laughing, and he closes it again because it's so shocking, so inappropriate, that he's actually embarrassed that he's doing this in a crowd, and he has to keep reassuring himself that nobody hears it, and then he goes back and starts laughing again. So I said to him after the flight, here, Jonathan, you can have it back. I said, who is that? He goes, it's Dave Chappelle. So I'm just setting this up. He's not a conservative Christian comedian. Shocking, the subjects and the way he goes into things. But he's popular. This is where America is. It's bread and circus time. It's like back in the Colosseum in Rome. So anyway, so Chappelle is doing his transgender routine at the very end of a great comedy performance, and he's basically being and he closes with a very serious affirmation of those that are identifying as transgender, because a friend of his who was transgender had committed suicide. And so he said, I want to be very sensitive, basically, to the reality that people struggle over this. And so he closes as honoring as he can for a comedian. He's giving a serious end to his comedy routine. But this wasn't acceptable to the woke Nazis in the woke Nazi movement. And that's what they are. They're intolerant. They're fascists. They're woke fascists. And so Netflix now has what? They said, well, at first they thought we were going to be thousands. So media is going to be talking all about all the woke little journalists. Oh, this is terrible what Netflix is doing, putting on Dave Chappelle. So there's going to be supposedly thousands of protesters, and it ends up being like 24. 24. And of course, the media covers this thing like a feeding frenzy. Now, why would you have 24 protesters? Because Netflix woke hiring, just like HBO, just like Facebook, what happens is, and this is going to ultimately destroy America if it's not dealt with. It's not about politics. You can hire a politician to represent you like you can hire a lobbyist. What shapes politics is public opinion. Whatever cause is looking for an empty suit will find the empty suit to go represent them in Washington. It's the fact that these causes exist that you should be concerned. Academia is creating this. It's bitter professors that feel like they're not paid enough, raging against all the other institutions and machines and tearing America apart and molesting the brains of your children and planting in them something worse than a COVID virus. COVID you can get rid of and don't die from. This other one will take over your life and destroy your country. Anyway, academia puts out these kids that are, they're woke activists, or they're questioning their own gender, and they're mad, raging against all of culture. And they have to take it over and change it. They can't coexist with you. So when you hire a dozen or 2 dozen LGBTQ, woke, transgender, Marxist progressives, you shouldn't be surprised that they're a religious movement. This is my point. Everything I said was to make this point. Everything I said all day was to make this point. The organizations, the corporations are hiring religious fanatics. How would you like it if we had a whole breed of Pentecostal Puritans? These are people that are absolutely vocal to the point of public disruption over monogamy and marriage, heterosexual marriage, to just being with one person, and being faithful to that person for your entire life, and not having premarital sex and experimentation, but simply being committed to one person and not having sex till you find that person, and then being married and staying with that person for their entire life, that is the puritanical Pentecostal new movement. And that they're so strong on this that every broadcast that celebrates adultery and premarital sex, they go out on the streets and they protest and tear up the pavement because you hired them and brought them in, and you know what they believe, and they won't tolerate your blasphemy. Well, I'm just giving you the parallel universe. That's what the woke activists are. You're hiring them. You're embedding them into your system. These people that are also freaked out about climate change and pollution are actually ingesting the destructive toxins that are heating them up, changing the climate, and blowing up their corporate cultures. No. You've now hired these people, and you're going to keep hiring them because that's what your HR department is telling you got to do. So Chappelle says he is now not able to be on any of the all the film festivals shut him down. There's film festivals all over the world that show the Chappelle movie, but they won't do it because the entire film festival world is infected by the woke ideology of the religious fanatics. So they're blocking him. Essentially, Netflix is standing alone. And Chappelle says, look, if Netflix folds on this, then I'm going to do 10 events. I'm just going to go to 10 cities and promote the event. He's going to go to live rallies. Could it be that this is a parallel? I'm just saying, listen to me. I'm going to end this segment, but there's a reason for this rant. Could it be that we've got to think through how academia is poisoning corporations and culture? How the real problem won't be solved till we have diversity. I'm not saying shut down the Marxist fanatics. I'm saying have diversity of viewpoint so you hear the coherent argument for culture on the other side. And I'm saying that Dave Chappelle is standing alone. And if you want to pray for somebody in the cosmic warfare, pray that God will raise up another dozen Dave Chappelles and Joe Rogans, and maybe Jon Stewart and Bill Maher, because the comedians are the ones you notice. The comedians are the ones that get it. That's the canary in the coal mine. When you can't joke about something, you have lost freedom of speech. You're now taken over by the Sanhedrin. Hey, if you haven't seen me around as much on the platform recently, it's because all the explosive, incendiary things that I want to say, the Lance Rants, are on the podcast. Go to lancewallnut.com/podcast and hear the unbridled utterance